really cool story to share today on the podcast. It's something that I get asked quite often, especially by my private clients and those in the certification program. And it's how and why I retired my husband and the three things that we did to make that happen. Because literally doing that to be able to have the complete freedom of both of us being able to work independently on our goals and dreams, being able to travel the world, being able to really spend that quality time together, not have to ask for time off, all that stuff that happened to us when we both had 9 to 5 jobs. It has been the dream come true. And I know it's not everyone's goal and dream necessarily to have a company with their spouse or with their partner, but I know a lot of people have this similar dream. And I just wanted to really peel back the layers of how we made this happen and the three steps we did to make it work out. So basically, story time a little bit. Back in 2020 is when I quit my own day job. I had worked in my day job for 10 years at that point. So, one of my first jobs out of college was in the mortgage industry. That's where I actually met my husband. I quickly determined that that was not for me, and I went into the university setting. So, I worked in a university. I started at quite the bottom and kind of worked my way up into a strategic initiatives manager that worked directly with the dean to be able to initiate new centers, especially around entrepreneurship and innovation, which is kind of interesting. That's now what I do. But basically, I had been in that career for 10 years. And I started my business on the side. I started my coaching business on the side back really in 2018 is when I started posting on social media and building like a blog and an email list. But it wasn't until 2019 that I started selling any services. So I really think of 2019 as my first year in business. And so by the time it's 2020, it's really only been like a year and a half that I've been doing my business. I'm ready to leave my day job. I've been ready for a long time now. Obviously, I always wanted my coaching business to be able to take off, but 2020 is when I really take that leap of faith. And basically, at that point, I had honestly very full transparency here. I had been making maybe $700 in my business a month, sometimes $2,000, sometimes back to 700, back to 3,000. So there wasn't a sense of stability yet, and there definitely wasn't a sense of oh, this is gonna replace my income from my job. But I just had this huge universal pull and push to quit my job. And in fact, I would open magazines and newspapers and I would just randomly see the words quit your job. So I had been getting signs for almost 8 months at that point that it was time to quit my job. And then I finally got the push I needed. And I think my really incredible boss that I had for a while was leaving, and we got a new boss. And I was like, okay, this is the time to also make my exit. So I did that back in 2020. Obviously, it's also the pandemic. And one of the reasons why it was so important for me to leave my day job is not only because I wanted to make Euphoric like my main thing, my main career, but also because I'm obsessed with traveling. I'm obsessed with seeing the world, and all I wanted to do was travel. And I got gotten to a point in my career where I had quite a bit more time off than most people. So when I first started, I only had 2 weeks off, but then as I got up more in the university career, I had 4 weeks off a year. So I actually had a quite cushy kind of time off system. So it wasn't that bad, but it still wasn't that flexible. I couldn't just travel whenever I wanted to. I would still have to ask someone, all those things that come with it. So it's the pandemic. I leave my full time job. I'm on my own. And literally the next month, I have a 10K month. So, like I said, I had a $700 month, $2,000 month. I had no evidence at all that Euphoric was going to be able to sustain me and make enough money to support me. And the first month after quitting my job, I made 10K months. The second month, I made 10K month. The third month, I made a 10K month. And I was like, holy shit, when you jump, the universe will catch you. And it really bolstered my belief that this is what I was meant to do and that I shouldn't have been so worried. And so at the same time, I was also really grappling. I remember I was in a business mastermind at this point, which is so important because I feel like when you're not in spaces that challenge you and push you to grow, you don't. You stay really stagnant and you kind of compare yourself to other people who aren't growing businesses. And so you just don't grow at the same level when you're not immersed in those spaces. And so I'm in this business mastermind. I was totally a beginner back then, but anyway, I'm still there. And I remember one of the challenges that I brought up to people was what happens if this causes a rift in my marriage? I don't know why I was so worried about this, but I was worried basically that, if I thought that I'm going to quit my job and all of a sudden I'm not going to be bringing in a steady income, I started going to the worst case scenario, right? Like, what happens if we lose our mortgage? What happens if we, go bankrupt? What happens if, we can't afford living? And, I'm very lucky. My parents are both alive. And so instead of going to that dark scenario of like, okay, now we're homeless, now we live under a bridge, I was like, Carolina, if really the worst thing ever happened, you would just go live with your parents. It really wouldn't be that big of a deal. But then when I thought of it that way, I was like, yeah, but my husband would hate me. He would resent me, right? He would be like, I can't believe we blew through all of our savings. I can't believe we lost this house. I can't believe we're living back with your parents. And so at this time in this mastermind, I remember I kept bringing this up that what if this causes a rift in my marriage? Me quitting my job and potentially putting us in harm's way. It was a big deal to me back then. And I remember I had a really, really dear friend and colleague and peer say to me, you're scared that your husband would resent you or that he would be upset with you, but what also causes rifts in marriage is you resenting him. And imagine that you never do leave your day job and never go for your dream to play some certain role for him or to stay in the status quo for him. Imagine how upset you would be with him in your lifetime if you never went for your dreams because of him. And when she said it like that, something just clicked in my mind. Like, not only did I have to do this, did I have to leave this day job, but I also stopped worrying so much about these worst case scenarios and just understood that this is actually meant for us. Like, we are going to thrive like this, and it's going to be amazing. So here I am on my own now, working for Euphoric full time, bringing in these healthy cash months. That wasn't my story when I had a full time job, and I am burning to travel. Like, I just left this job after 10 years. The sky's the limit, except for two things. The first thing is it's the pandemic, and most countries are closed to US visitors. I don't know if you remember, but like literally there were such few places that were open to go. Travel was kind of not condoned at that time. So I remember like looking at lists of places that were open, and it was down to like Turkey and Brazil. Like, you couldn't go to Europe, you couldn't go here, you couldn't go there. You could go to Turkey or Brazil. And I was just like fantasizing, like, I want to go to Turkey or Brazil, but I didn't, right? And I actually just went to Brazil a few months ago to finally fill that bucket list dream. And something just like felt weird about traveling so far away from my partner by myself in the middle of a pandemic. However, my parents are big travelers. Things started to slowly open up. So I started making some trips that are more closer. I started going to Mexico a little bit more. I went to some conferences and went to some cities around the US with that. I think I went to Hawaii once. And I started to travel a bit more without my husband. I also traveled without my husband when I had a full time job too, because I would have some travel with work. And another thing became really apparent to me was that this dream of traveling the world and just having this freedom, it doesn't really work without my partner. Not to sound codependent or anything like that, but I just wanted to share this dream with him. I wanted to be able to like go and live in places for like a month and or 2 months and really immerse ourselves and have these beautiful experiences together. Like, anytime I traveled without my husband, I just wish I could have brought him there too. So I have all these destinations around the world that I've been that he hasn't been, and I'm like, okay, we gotta go back because I want to show you the magic of it, right? And that was just something that I felt so special for. And the thing is that this whole story culminates in me retiring my husband, bringing him into this company, and us working together. And there's so many people who like are kind of against that in entrepreneurship world that like, oh, your partner should have his own thing. He should have his own career. He should be working up the corporate ladder to bring more structure to like your entrepreneurship stuff. And I can get how that might be the right choice for someone else, but it definitely wasn't the right choice for us. Because alongside this story, while me and my husband were both working day jobs, I had a little bit more flexibility with the time off. I had maybe 4 weeks a year. He had like barely 2 weeks, sometimes even just a week off a year. And for most of our time together, he would have to ask, even though he was like a team lead, he was like way up in his company, he was one of the best performers in his company. He would have to ask his boss if he could take time off. And if someone else on his team was also taking time off, he wasn't allowed to go. Even if we already bought the plane tickets, right? It was asinine. It felt like we were treated like children. I hated it. And so for those 10 years that we both had those day jobs, we did so many trips where we would leave on a Friday night, like a Friday red eye, and then fly back on a Monday morning. Like, we went to Mexico a few times like that. We went to like Chicago and Denver. Like, we did these trips all the time like that because he had no time off, or it was such a hassle to actually be able to get this time off. I remember once when we got engaged, we went to Europe on a 2-week trip, and it was a cruise. So my parents planned it. My parents planned a lot of cruises, and then we just ended up going with them. So we went on this cruise, and my husband, then it was my boyfriend, actually proposed to me on this trip. It was really amazing. It was in 2013. And he proposed to me in Venice, and it was so romantic and so special. And then everyone else in my family went off to go to Poland to go visit my family. And I hadn't actually been in Poland since 2005 at that point, and we couldn't go. Like, we had already maxed out our time off. We both had to go home. And I just think of those types of times when, like, you're already someplace, you're already so far from home, you've already done the long plane trip, and yet you can't go any further because you got to get back to go to work. You know what I mean? That's happened way too many times to count. And I almost always regret those times of like, I wish we could have gone further. I wish we could have explored more. I wish we would have seen the family, but we both didn't have the time off. So it's like 10 years of this like headache of I can't ever plan a vacation, even though he is a high performer, does incredible in the financial industry. He's one of the top people in his company. He still is treated like a baby where he can't go and have time off unless he asks for it, and no one else can have time off then. So like it would always be this thing where we never knew what would happen. I could never buy a plane ticket. And it just got so frustrating. It really, really did. And it was something that was like a present in our relationship for so long. It just was so annoying, right? And obviously bothered me so much because I love that freedom and I love that travel. And so then my husband gets a new job, I think right before the pandemic or during the pandemic, and it's a lot more flexible. Thank God he can work from home. His other company wouldn't let them work from home when when the pandemic was happening. But this job's a lot more flexible. However, because he's in the financial industry, even though he's working from home, and even though technically he could be a digital nomad and work from Mexico or some other destination, the financial industry has this really strict rule that you can't be outside of the country if you want to work for them. And you really shouldn't even be traveling at all. You should be at home because of VPNs and security and all that kind of stuff. My husband, bless his heart, he's a rule follower. He's like, I'm not gonna like break the rules here. Like he has a strong sense of integrity. He's really sincere. He's really genuine. He follows the rules. He didn't follow always the rules when he was younger, and he got himself in hairy situations. So now he's just like a by the book kind of a guy. So when I wanted to like go to Mexico for a week and both work from there, he was like, I can't. Like they track my VPN. It's a security issue. We're not gonna go do that. So long story short, I wanted to explain a little bit of behind the why it was like so important for me and us to have this setup where we both have way more flexibility because we had already been through the ringer. Like we had literally, this was the biggest pain point for me at least on where we can travel, what we can do, what we can even plan in our lives. Like it was always so frustrating and annoying. And I had this dream of just having that flexibility ever since I graduated college. It was the dream to travel the world and work somehow abroad or like a digital nomad or remote or something like that. I never thought it'd be my own company, but hey, things change, right? So that's kind of our situation that's really driving also the desire for like finding that sense of freedom for both of us. And I know not everybody has that same situation. So when there's other entrepreneurs out there saying, I'm not going to retire my husband, or I want him to be in his masculine, or whatever, like this was our like reasoning. This is what was so important to us. And so back in 2020, I travel a bit. It's 2021 now. I keep traveling a little bit by myself. And I just, again, have this really big realization that the real dream is that we're doing this together. That, like, this is finally our reality where we're a couple, that I take my home wherever we go, and that I'm not just by myself cavorting around the world while he's stuck at home working. Like, we have to make this work for both of us. And so I remember that it was at a Tony Robbins event, the events that he did online, because during the pandemic, again, he also shut down his events. So it was one of those online events, and it just came to me like, I have to manifest this goal. And so I write down my husband like resigns from his job May 2021. And I put it on the fridge. And my husband's like, what is this? You know, like we hadn't even talked about it yet. It just was this like crazy idea I had. It was just a few months ago that I left my own day job. And I'm like, okay, by May 2021, let's do this. Let's like really make it happen where we both leave our day jobs and we can travel and build this company together. I don't know when I put that at, maybe February or something like that of 2021. But every day we looked at it, every single day. And at first my husband was like, I don't know what this is about, but we slowly warm up to it. We slowly start talking about it. But May 2021 comes around. We're still doing a lot of our weekend trips, you know, maybe taking a week here and there. but he's still working. May 2021 comes and goes, and he does not quit his job. And so it's something that we keep talking about and keep talking about, but like I'm not yet making that, I'm making good, healthy salary. I am definitely making way over six figures. I think I get to the multiple six figures even, but with like expenses and not being sure about health insurance and all this stuff, it just doesn't feel like we're totally ready to both jump in, right? And so in 2022, I decide, we talk about it, that we've always wanted to spend some time in Europe. We actually really want to live in Europe, but because we have a dog and house and everything that kind of keeps us home, we decide to spend 3 months in Europe. And that is really this like her big hurrah that we have, that we're going to do this together. And there's no way that we can go spend 3 months in Europe when my husband has a full-time job. So we decide, okay, like I think this is it, right? And it's like a huge move. Putin invades Ukraine at the same time, and we're going to go to Poland. So we're both kind of nervous about like, is this actually going to be able to happen? Is Europe going to be at war? Like, we even change our flights a little bit so that we're not flying directly into Poland just in case something happens. But we finally make it happen, and the only way, obviously, he can go is if he puts his resignation in. When does he do it? Not May of 2021, but May of 2022. He puts his resignation, and we're off for like our 3 month season of living in Europe. We go to Paris first. We go then to Warsaw, and I like work, and we hang out with family there. We go around Poland. We go to Italy. We go to Florence and Bologna. We go to the Italian Alps. Oh my God, it's so beautiful there. We have such an amazing time there. We then go to Croatia after that. Actually, we hit up Venice first, and that was the first time we've been back to Venice together since we got engaged there. Then we went to Split and parts of Croatia and did ferries around Croatia. Then we went back to Poland. We went to the seaside with my parents, which is so special. Both of my parents are retired and much older, so spending as much time as with them is really important to both of us. And then I flew to New York because I had a speaking gig, and then he went off to Prague by himself and like did the whole backpacking thing around Prague, which is cool. And then we met up back in Poland. Then we flew to Greece, and then we did a Greek cruise and did like the Greek islands, Israel, parts of Turkey as well. And then we flew to France, Lyon. I saw a really amazing client in Lyon. We went to Dijon, and then we got back to Paris and flew home. So that was like our whole trip in a nutshell of all the beautiful places we went. And to tell you the truth, when we first embarked on the trip, he quit his job, obviously, but I still wasn't sure if we would make enough money to support both of us. And there was a part of me that was like, he might have to go back to his job when he gets back. And we talked about that could be a viable option, that maybe, he just takes a break for 3 months, but then sees if he can get his position back when he comes home. And that obviously wasn't ideal, but we were willing to do that. Like both of us, it was before we started trying to have kids. We just really wanted to make this Europe trip work, have this like incredible summer, really go all in on this like living situation there. And that was still at the back of our minds, that maybe he would have to, go back to work, and, so be it. But something amazing happens that summer. And whether it's us working together, because I'm starting to bring him in projects during that time, whether it's the freedom of being in Europe, whether it's the freedom of like living this dream that we've always had for so long, the company starts bringing in a lot more money, right? And we get back from Europe, and we start to see that he doesn't have to go back, that we're actually making this work. And so we kind of really sit down together and decide, like, I could see him as such a huge role in this company. Like, so much he has to add, so many ways of thinking that, like, I don't even think about. And so we started even outlining, like, how he could really be my strategic partner, how he could really manage our ads, how he could manage the operations of the company, manage the finances. And we start to kind of delegate and carve out roles for ourselves where, yes, I'm the visionary and I'm the marketer and I'm the face of everything, but he's also like so much involved as the strategic partner. Like every big decision I make, every even thing that happens in this company, like we walk every day, I tell him everything and he helps me make every decision. Like it's amazing to have someone there with you at that level. Like it's such an incredible blessing. He helps me with the ad strategy. He is the ad manager, basically. He is the operations manager. He manages the team. He manages the finances. He manages the like overall everything to do with operations, basically, and the more analytical side of the company. And it's been such an incredible blessing. such an incredible blessing. Um, that year after we get back from Europe, I have a retreat in Puerto Vallarta, and he comes to me for Puerto Vallarta. At first, I wasn't sure because it was like an all women's retreat, and I was like, "Is it kind of weird that I'm bringing my husband?" It was the best decision ever because he is such a personable person. He gets along with so many people. He really listens. He really cares, and he just makes everyone feel like at home and loved and comforted and supported. That like I remember one woman was saying goodbye to me at the retreat, and she was like, "Carolina, this was a great retreat, but Robert, you were really amazing." Like they were totally fawning over him and just being so sweet to him. And just another thing clicks in me that like, wow, that like personable, beautiful way of like communing with people. Like he's so good at it. Like he's such a value add to this team. Like, oh my God. And so it just like really solidifies more and more and more that like the best thing we've ever done is to combine forces and run this dream together. This beautiful company that we can grow together instead of me trying to do it on his own my own and then him over here in some mortgage industry job that's like good and dandy on paper, but is not really the deepest, dream in his heart either, right? Like it really made sense for us to come together and for me to technically retire him, but not really because he's working for Euphoric, right? We're together a team in Euphoric, and then we have other team members as well. And so that's kind of like the behind the scenes story. And so then in 2023, we end up moving to Orange County. He's like a huge help in being able to figure everything out, like getting the renters and just like so much that he can focus on without his full time job. And he's able to support in Euphoric as well. And in 2023, we start traveling more. We go to Costa Rica. We host, I don't think we host a retreat. Oh, yeah, we do. We host a retreat in Bali. So we go to Bali, and at first, before that, we go to Japan, and then Australia, and then Bali. And it's like, again, we're living this dream so deeply. Like, I'm getting paid to travel to Bali to host a retreat. He is too. Everybody falls in love with him in Bali as well. And like, we both love Japan so much. So we just make that, side trip to Japan while we're already in Asia. And I'm like, holy shit, like, we are really living the dream. We go to Europe again that summer. We spend, I think, a whole month and a half in Europe that summer. We start traveling and do some different retreats in the US as well. So he's supporting there. And then we host our first certification retreat in Palm Springs in 2023. Oh my God, again, my husband is helping me figure out so many things and doing behind the scenes work and even helping me like move the tables and stuff. And I'm just like so blessed. I'm thinking to myself, like, this is magic. The two of us together doing this, being able to travel, being able to have the same goals, the same kind of strategy, really being able to like talk through new ideas, implement things together, me give him a project and he runs with it, he giving me an idea, and I run with it. And it just gelled so well. Obviously, it's not without its hiccups. Like, obviously, working with your partner can bring some of that, but it's kind of brilliant because, like, I have an upstairs office where I usually work, he usually works downstairs. We're both able to be home, we're both able to be much healthier, we can go on more walks, we can, like, really be with our dog. No one's leaving the house. Our dog loves it, obviously. We're able to eat healthier. We both have like a really nutritious breakfast every single morning, like a cooked breakfast. That was almost impossible when we both worked our full time jobs. And, we're just living this life where, yes, we can just pick up and travel, whether it's for the retreats that my company's doing or like wherever we want to go. So I ended up doing a trip to Brazil in 2024. There's so many retreats we did and onwards in the years. Like 2024, we also went to Costa Rica together and he helped and supported me there. But I ended up doing a business retreat with someone else in 2024 in Brazil. And again, even though it wasn't like really something that I'd bring him to because it was like a female only thing, it was like, why not go to Brazil together before? And to have that flexibility where it's like, you know what, it's just no big deal. Like, let's just go to Brazil together for a week before this retreat and you'll fly home and then I'll stay. Like, that's the level of freedom that, like, I love so much. And then I just imagine for myself that I always wanted, not having to ask anyone for time off, not having to beg to see if you can finagle this week or that week, not having to only plan trips on like Labor Day or some other holiday that you already have off, to be able to strategize things together, to be knowing that someone like so competent is working on such critical points of the company, and to like have someone on the ground with me as I'm hosting retreats, as I'm talking to people, like it just is everything. It really truly is everything for me. And I know again, it's not everyone's path, but for us, it really was the right move. And so we did the Brazil trip together. We got home, we spent the holidays at home. And at the time of this recording, we are both leaving to Dubai. So the next day after I record this, we're hopping on a plane to Dubai, and then we're gonna go spend a week in the Maldives. Again, pinch me kind of moment. And we're actually, what's really cool is that since we're gonna just spend like a week totally chilling in the Maldives, both of us are really hungry to work on some like back end projects that we haven't really done in a while in the Euphoric company, where we can really strategize and brainstorm together and just have this like mastermind together. Like it's so cool that we're gonna be able to do this in the Maldives, plus enjoy the sun and the swimming and the snorkeling and all the beautiful animals and the beautiful scenery while we're doing it. And so that's like the story in a nutshell of what we've created with this vision. Now, I wanted to share with you really three important parts of why we were able to make this happen. And a lot of times when I wanted to leave my day job, or I wanted him, we wanted him to leave his day job, we started looking at kind of backwards, like, oh, do we have enough money for this? Are we going to be supported? Is the company going to bring enough money? Do we have enough like initiatives for this? So like thinking of it that way always got us stuck, always, because no, the company never was bringing enough money at that point that we started thinking about it until we got to the next level. That was kind of unforeseeable, right? So it was almost this like faith that we had to have first, and then the action started happening and being implemented. So really when I look at it, these three things made it happen. So the first was deciding. So we didn't wait for the evidence to see if this is going to be feasible for us and our family. We just decided that this is what we want. And I think this is really critical for you for any goal or dream that you have. Whether you want to leave your day job, you want your partner to leave his day job, or you want to launch a business or, do something amazing or beautiful, you have to decide that you want it. Now, it doesn't mean that just because you decide you have to do it tomorrow, because basically we kind of talked about it and decided well before he actually resigned that that's what we both wanted. And I kind of came up with it first, right? So like I wrote that sign on the fridge and put it up there. So like that was really that decision point. So like I work with people a lot where it's like, okay, well, when do you want to leave your corporate job? It doesn't have to be tomorrow. It doesn't have to be a month from now, but like 2026, 2027, 2028, like you can give yourself a lot of time if that's what makes you feel better, but you have to decide that it's coming or else nothing is ever going to change, right? So deciding is big, and I would actually write down if it's like a goal or a resignation, I would write down the date that you actually want this done by. So if you're putting June 5th, 2026, write that down somewhere, stick it somewhere you're going to see every single day because it will embed into your subconscious mind, just like that sign that I put on the fridge. I don't think it's a coincidence that I put May 2021 and he ended up resigning May 2022. That sign was on that fridge that whole year. We were both looking at it every single time we opened the fridge, right? So I think deciding and planting it in a specific place and time is going to be really important. The second thing that we did to make this happen was that we burned all the boats. So if you've ever learned the definition of decide from the Latin root, it actually means to cut off. And this strategy means that you decide that this is what you're doing and there is no plan B. There is no we're going to go back to this. And even though we weren't really sure when we went to Europe if he would go back to his job or not, we did burn the boats by saying, we're buying tickets to Europe. So I bought those tickets to Paris well before he actually resigned. So whether or not we felt nervous about it or we were kind of shaky and we weren't sure if it was going to work or not, the decision was already made for us, right? Like we already burned the boats. There is a trip to Europe on the books. We don't come back until September. It's May. We're gonna have to have that conversation, and resign, or else this ticket's gonna go wasted. And so I think that really helped us too, because even though I wasn't sure if we would have enough money to fund this, or if the company would gonna be strong enough to bring in enough revenue to support both of us, and then the health insurance and the retirement, all the kind of stuff that you have to think about. By making this trip on the calendar, it forced our hand. Everything we were scared of. I mean, this was also the year that Putin invaded Ukraine, and we were planning on spending a lot of time in Poland, which shares a border with Ukraine. Millions. I don't know the exact number. I think it was 5 million, 20 million. I don't know. Don't quote me on that, but millions of Ukrainian refugees spilled over the border into Poland. So Poland was also, even though it wasn't technically attacked during the war, it was having a huge upheaval in its society and being able to care for these new refugees and be able to, either send them to new homes or to be able to have temporary homes built up. Warsaw got the biggest influx of Ukrainian refugees at that time. So if I didn't have tickets booked already, I don't even know if it would have happened this trip because we might have chickened out and been like, well, it's a sign that we're not supposed to go. Putin invaded Ukraine, so now we can't like live out our dream, right? And so I think it's just like a really critical piece, not only of deciding, but then you burn the boats. Okay, and then the third thing that really helped us make this happen was making it happen. And I think that this is what we often think of as the first thing. So I got such a big boost of creativity in Europe. We started selling more programs. My husband and I had new ideas for different offers. The certification really came to me at that point, even though we didn't have it as an offer yet until 2023. It just started really percolating. And so this is that last piece where we made it work. And when we got back from Europe, the company was growing. He didn't have to go back to his job, and we were able to make it work. So it's almost like we did it backwards, but it was actually the best perfect order, because if you try to make it happen and implement it and make the money come in or the dream happen or whatnot at the very beginning, you're probably not going to get much evidence that it works. Versus if you just decide and then burn your boats, you have no choice but to make it work. Like, you have no choice but to make it work, right? And I know that can be a scary strategy for some people. Like, oh, I'm just going to quit my job and hope it all works out. Like, obviously you want to have some traction at that point. You don't want to probably start from scratch and just quit your job. You probably want to have some traction already. But trust me, like, when your feet are at the fire, you're going to like run. You're going to make it happen. When you take that leap of faith, there's nothing you can do but fly. Like, if you don't want to crash and go bankrupt and lose everything, you're going to have to fly, right? And I think that that really worked for someone like me and someone like my husband to make Euphoric so much more successful. And so we grew to such levels in 2022. We doubled in 2023. We grew even more in 2024. So it's just astounded me at these decisions that we've made to just go all in and how much that's worked out for us. I'm so excited for our Dubai and Maldives trip. I think this podcast will air when we're there on the ground. So it's just so special to me, this bucket list trip that I've been dreaming of going on. Like, we've made it happen. We're going to shoot so much content. We're going to get ready for our next thing that we're hosting in Paris this year. We're going to go to Palm Springs next for another retreat. Like, this is our life. This is what we get to do together. And, working with a spouse, I would say definitely doesn't come without hiccups, but like, everything for us has been really manageable. And I think it's brought us closer together. And we still have like boundaries and distance. Like I said, I work upstairs, he works downstairs, but I think it works really beautifully. And when we have a child, because we are trying, and we've been trying for quite a while now, it's like the perfect environment. Like, to know that he doesn't have to leave every day and leave me by myself with the child, or vice versa. Like, we're both here together. We both can tag and share so many more responsibilities with that child and with the company. It's just like this feeling of full on support, and just full on like focus on the goals in front of us, that we're doing it together instead of like me looking this way and him looking that way, and it not actually being this cohesive, aligned thing for us and our family. So again, I know it's not for everyone. Some people really love the idea of their spouse like working their way up in a corporate job and all the blessings for that. Obviously, some people love that stability or just love that sense of that differentiation of I do my thing, you do your thing. But for us, it was such the right move. I can't even imagine where we'd be. Like, I think my company wouldn't be as big as it is without my husband, for sure. And I once saw a psychic, which was really cool, and she tapped into my late grandmother. And she said that my late grandmother told her that Euphoric will grow when I listen to my husband's ideas more, and that, like, he has a lot of strategic and creative vision. And it happened. It happened like that, right? So it's just so cool that it worked like that. And I couldn't think of a better strategic partner to have at my side. So I'm just so happy that he went to the moon with me. That's something I wrote in my book, that, I'm going to the moon. I hope you're coming too. Let's get on a train to the moon. And to have someone who didn't always understand the vision, like, he didn't know what this company was going to bring when it first started, but that has like started to understand like what we're standing on and what we can really build, has been so meaningful, so special to me. So if you have any questions about anything to do with either leaving your day job or your partner leaving your day job, please feel free to DM me on Instagram. I didn't speak about some of the more specific things, like what we did for health insurance, what we did for our retirement accounts, any other kind of those like little tactical topics or paid leave or anything like that. I think some of those things are really cool to have some answers to, because then not only is everything figure outable and you're going to figure it out, but it's kind of nice to know what exists and what you can kind of lean on and rely on, and or like just have as a plan even if you're not planning on leaving your day job this year, let's say you are next year, it's kind of nice to know, like, okay, well, I can get my health insurance here, and I can get this here, and I can do that there. And like that, it all works out, and that there's other entrepreneurs who have already done this and are paving the way and showing you the way. So I hope this episode was super helpful. And just if it's something that you dream of too, like DM me on Instagram. I'm happy to share more about how we made this work. And thank you, Robert. This episode is dedicated to you. I don't often talk about my partner on this show, but you are everything. You are truly everything to me. Thank you so much for going to the moon for me and to like Mars next, and then to Jupiter and to Saturn. And we're just going to go conquer the galaxy together. I love you so much.